She didn't think you'd ever leave. She thought you'd always be there, waiting, checking, hoping. In her mind, you were the fallback plan, the man she could leave and return to when her world got quiet. But something happened she never saw coming. You stopped. You stopped chasing. You stopped watching. You stopped needing her approval to feel whole. And when you did that, something inside her shifted. It wasn't sadness, it was confusion, then shock, then something even deeper, regret. Because now, she's not sure if she let go of a man or the version of him who became everything she never imagined he could be. If you're listening to this, you're not here for distractions. You're here because you've been through something. Maybe you're in it right now. The silence, the detachment, the uncertainty. Or maybe you're already building, becoming, in a way. This message is for you. And if this video resonates with you, support the message. Every like, comment, and subscribe helps bring this truth to others who need it most. You're not just helping yourself. You're helping thousands of others break free from the same emotional trap. Let's change lives together. The shift. There's a specific moment in a man's journey where everything begins to change. Not because someone came back. Not because closure was given, because the situation magically improved, but because he stopped chasing. And not just literally like texting or reaching out. I mean, emotionally chasing, mentally orbiting, spiritually attaching yourself to someone who's already made it clear they're not invested. That's the kind of chasing that drains you silently, even when you think you're fine. But when a man wakes up one morning and decides no more replaying old messages, no more overanalyzing why she left, no more waiting for her to check in, that's when he starts to detach for real. That's when the invisible chain around his heart begins to loosen. You don't need to make a dramatic exit or send a final message. The shift doesn't require a spotlight. It begins inside. It begins when your mind reclaims space that's been occupied by thoughts of her. That mental and emotional space. It's valuable, and you've been giving it away for free to someone who's already moved on. When that shift begins, when you stop checking if she watched your story, stop watching when she was last online, stop decoding silence like it's some secret message, something powerful starts to happen. You stop revolving around her world. You begin revolving around your own. You invest that energy into yourself, your fitness, your career, your friendships, your peace of mind. And it's not just surface level improvement. It's a foundational shift in identity. You're not the same man anymore, because your focus is no longer dictated by someone else's availability. Now, here's the part many don't expect. She feels it, not always consciously, but intuitively. Women are more perceptive than they're often given credit for. She may not say it, she may not fully realize it, but she can sense it. Something's different. Your attention is no longer there. The warmth she once felt is gone. That invisible connection she used to pull on, it's no longer attached. And that's when it starts to hit her. Not necessarily regret at first, but confusion, disorientation, and emotional imbalance. She was used to your reactions, used to having a place in your heart that gave her comfort and control. And now that space is quiet, still closed. Whether she truly cared for you or just liked the attention, the emotional shift impacts her. But because emotional power is often unnoticed until it's gone. And when you take that power back, by choosing yourself, not out of resentment, not to get back at anyone, but out of clarity, you reclaim something most men never even knew they gave away. Your center. You become whole again. Not because she came back, but because you came back to yourself. And that's when everything truly changes. Not just in how she sees you, but in how you see yourself. The shift isn't about revenge. It's not about provoking emotions. It's deeper than that. It's transformational. It's sacred. The power of silence. It's the beginning of becoming a man whose peace is no longer negotiable, whose self-worth isn't built on someone else's approval. And that kind of man, he's rare. He's powerful. He's free. The psychology. Most men never learn this. Not from their fathers, not from their friends, not from school. No one teaches you that emotional availability is a currency. And like all currency, The more freely you give it to someone who doesn't value it, the faster it loses its worth. You might have believed that showing up for her emotionally was strength, that your consistency, patience, and support were proof of loyalty, and they were. But there's a deeper truth at play, one that operates at a psychological level, subtle and almost invisible, until it hits. When someone, especially a woman, believes your emotions are always accessible, she doesn't necessarily devalue you on purpose. It's not always manipulation. Often, it's unconscious. It's human nature. What's constant becomes background noise, like music playing in another room. Always there, always assumed. So even if she walks away, loses interest, or moves on, there's often an unspoken belief that you'll still be there. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. She believes you still care, that you still check in, that you haven't really moved on. That belief becomes a comfort, a mental safety net. Now imagine what happens when that safety net disappears. Not with drama, not with a final text or confrontation, but silently, peacefully, with no need to prove anything, just quiet detachment. That kind of exit isn't just surprising, it's psychologically disarming. It forces the other person to recalibrate everything they assumed about their place in your life. Your lack of reaction, your refusal to chase, to beg for clarity, short-circuits the emotional script she expected. A brain, like all of ours, seeks patterns, closure, certainty, but your silence provides none of that. And in that confusion, reflection begins. She starts asking questions, not always out loud, and not always to you, but inside herself. Was I wrong about him? Did I misjudge his strength? Was he more grounded than I gave him credit for? These aren't ego-driven questions. They come from the uncomfortable collision between perception and reality. She perceived you as needy, emotional, stuck, a man who would orbit her world forever. But the reality is, you evolved quietly, powerfully, without needing her recognition. And this is what most men don't realize. When you truly detach, you're not just walking away from a woman. You're removing her emotional control. That control might not have been something she consciously tried to keep, but it was something she always benefited from. The ability to influence your mood with her absence, the ability to trigger you with silence, the ability to stay in your heart simply by doing nothing. That's power, invisible power. And when it's gone, it creates a vacuum. She feels it, her brain feels it, and that creates discomfort. But not all discomfort is regret. Sometimes it's just a mirror that forces her to ask herself questions that go far beyond you. Did I lose someone I actually needed? Did I walk away too soon? Did I think he'd stay broken, only to see him thriving without me? These questions don't always lead her back to you. They're not always about getting you back. More often, they're about her facing the truth, that her perception of you was incomplete, that her decision to leave was based on who you were, not who you were becoming. And here's the real twist. It's not just about her seeing your growth. It's about how your growth forces her to see herself differently. That's the core of the psychological impact. Because now she's not just comparing her current reality to the man she left. She's comparing herself to the man you've become. And if your growth outpaces hers, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, that comparison not from jealousy, but because she realizes she no longer has any influence over your story, she's no longer part of your transformation. And that exclusion can feel like a loss, even if she chose to walk away. So understand this. Your silence is not emptiness. It's a message. A message that says, I have nothing left to explain. I've made peace without needing permission. That's not passive. That's not weak. That is one of the most powerful psychological shifts a man can make. You've taken your energy back. And now, whether she reaches out or remains silent, she'll remember that shift because it redefined how she sees you. And once perception changes, it's very hard to go back. There is a strength few men ever learn because it doesn't look like strength on the surface. It isn't loud. It isn't aggressive. It doesn't demand attention. It's not about having the last word or winning the argument. It's silence. The kind of silence that isn't passive or empty, but full of clarity, full of purpose. It's the silence that comes after you've said everything that needed to be said and realized that nothing more needs to be spoken. That silence, that calm is what makes you dangerous, in the best way. See, when you stop explaining yourself, something powerful happens. You stop giving her the ability to shape your reality. You no longer need her to understand, to validate, to reconsider. And with that, you cut the last thread that tied your peace to her opinion. You no longer need her to get it in order to heal. You no longer need her apology to forgive. You no longer need her attention to feel valuable. And that's when you step into a different kind of masculinity. One rooted in self-respect, not ego. Silence doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you gave up. It means you graduated. You've evolved past the phase where your emotions needed an audience. You've stopped living for reactions and started living from conviction. And when a woman sees that shift, when she realizes you no longer react to her absence, no longer flinch at her silence, no longer chase her validation, it shakes something inside her. Not because you're being cold, but because you've become calm. And calm is rare. Calm is magnetic. Most people live in a constant state of emotional reaction. They get ghosted and instantly seek closure. They get ignored and spiral into self-doubt. But not you. You didn't chase. You didn't beg. You didn't break. You sat with yourself. You built. You grew. You elevated. You moved in silence. And that silence became your new language. It became the quiet statement that said, "My life didn't end when you left. It began." Understand this. People expect you to stay broken, especially when they believe they were your greatest gift. They assume their absence will be your downfall, that you'll wait, watch, hope. But when you rise instead, stronger, clearer, more focused, that evolution shatters the narrative they wrote for you. You didn't fall apart. You became unavailing. No, just physically, but emotionally unreachable. And now, your silence is not a void. It's a message. It echoes in every moment. She thought she had power. It echoes in every silence where she expected a reaction and got peace instead. It tells a story she can't rewrite because you've stopped giving her access to the script. You didn't go quiet out of spite. You went quiet out of self-respect. And there is no louder message than that. So when she wonders where your attention went, when she checks your profile and finds no breadcrumbs, when she sends a passive message and gets no reply, she doesn't just feel ignored, she feels replaced by purpose. That's what silence does. It makes her realize your life moved forward without needing her in it. And the best part, you didn't do it to make her notice. You did it because you finally noticed yourself. You realized you were worth more than the cycle of confusion and pain. You understood that begging for closure from someone who chose distance is a battle you no longer need to fight. And that realization, it's the beginning of becoming untouchable. Not because you've closed your heart, but because you finally protected it. Silence doesn't beg. Silence doesn't prove. Silence doesn't chase. It creates space. And in that space, you rebuild. You reflect. You rise. Not to show anyone what they lost, but to remind yourself of what you were always capable of becoming. Silence is not emptiness. It is fullness under control. And when you master that, there is nothing and no one who can move you without your permission. When she starts noticing, it doesn't happen overnight. In fact, at first, she may not even realize it's happening. But eventually and inevitably, she starts to notice. And it's not always in the dramatic, movie-like way men imagine. It's subtle, softer, almost invisible. A few extra seconds on your profile, a quiet revisit to your page, a delayed response to a memory she suddenly can't shake. She'll scroll through your social media without liking anything, but she's watching. Maybe she stumbles across a photo of you, smiling, focused, improving. And for the first time, she doesn't feel certainty. She feels something else. Curiosity. That curiosity is layered. It's not always rooted in longing or romantic regret. Sometimes it's just confusion, emotional misalignment. You were supposed to stay stuck. You were supposed to chase, to linger, to keep checking in. But now she can't read you. And when a woman can't read your emotions, when she can't predict how you react, When she realizes she no longer knows where she stands in your life, that creates disruption in her emotional system. And human beings hate uncertainty, especially when they once had control. She might test the waters, a casual "how have you been" message, a random emoji on an old story, a like on a post she knows. You'll see, none of these actions come from clarity. They come from conflict. She's trying to figure out if what she feels is real, if you've really moved on, if the door that was once always slightly open is now locked. And more importantly, she's trying to gauge how she feels about that reality. A reality where you no longer need her to function, to breathe, to define your worth. But not every woman reaches out. In fact, many never will. Some feel the shift in silence. They won't say a word, but they feel it deeply. The energy isn't the same anymore. That invisible emotional cord they thought would always stay connected is suddenly cut. And what replaces it? Stillness, distance, absence. The man who once made them feel adored now makes them feel unacknowledged. Not because he became cruel, but because he became indifferent. And in emotional dynamics, indifference is the most powerful force of all. This isn't about playing games or being cold. It's not about pretending not to care. It's about genuinely no longer placing her at the center of your emotional world. Ages in emotional loops. He's entered a new season of life, and watching that transition from the outside creates a kind of tension she wasn't prepared for. Because it's not just that you healed, it's that you transformed. And in that transformation, you became a reflection, a mirror she wasn't ready to face. A reminder of her own choices, her own timing, her own assumptions. Maybe she doesn't regret leaving. Maybe she truly believes she made the right decision. But even in that belief, she now sees what she no longer has access to. A man who rose when he was expected to fall. A man who no longer needs her presence to feel whole. A man who turned pain into purpose, and in doing so, became someone she never imagined losing. You outgrew her. Most men never stop to fully acknowledge how far they've come. When you're in the middle of your growth journey, grinding in silence, healing in private, rebuilding yourself one broken piece at a time, it's easy to overlook your own evolution. But make no mistake, moving on isn't about getting under someone new. It's not about who you're dating now or how quickly you move forward. True growth is when the person who once hurt you no longer holds emotional weight in your chest. You don't flinch when her name comes up. You don't spiral into overthinking. You don't get derailed by her silence. That's not numbness. That's maturity. That's evolution. You become emotionally immune to what once shattered you. The triggers that used to pull you into self-doubt now fall flat. Her approval, once so deeply tied to your sense of identity, is no longer relevant. And maybe that realization didn't happen overnight. Maybe it came after countless nights of silence, moments of reflection, days of emotional chaos that slowly started to make sense. But here you are now, calm, focused, clear. And it's because you did the work. You chose to stop needing someone who made it clear you weren't a priority. That shift is profound. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg to be noticed. It doesn't demand closure or recognition. Instead, it moves in silence. You no longer define your days by her presence or absence. You no longer carry the version of yourself that was desperate for her attention. Your energy is now directed toward your goals, your health, your peace. What used to be emotional dependence has become self-respect. What used to be a chase has become stillness. And she feels the space where your attention used to live. She notices the absence of the man who once made her the center of his emotional world. And whether she admits it or not, there's a quiet shock in realizing she no longer gets to affect you. She no longer gets to enter your thoughts whenever she wants. She no longer gets to influence your day with a simple message or sudden silence. That's not revenge. That's what happens when you outgrow someone. See, she used to be the story you told. She was the one you mentioned in conversations, the one who lived in the back of your mind when you made decisions. She was the emotional backdrop of your life. But now, you're writing chapters where her name isn't even referenced. And that isn't cruelty. It's clarity. It means you've reclaimed the pen. You're no longer stuck in a chapter she authored. You're writing your own narrative now, one that doesn't revolve around what she thinks or what she feels. That's what real growth looks like. Your success, however it's unfolding, doesn't need her applause. Your peace doesn't require her permission. And most importantly, your happiness isn't rooted in her return. That's where the game changes. That's where most men begin to understand their real power. Because you didn't just move on, you evolved past the version of you that ever needed her to begin with. And when she sees this, whether it's through your silence, your energy, or your progress, it registers differently. It forces a shift in her perception, not necessarily because she wants you back, but because she realizes you became a man she no longer has access to. And that access, it used to be her comfort zone. Now, it's closed, not with malice, but with growth. Your life didn't pause when she left. It didn't fall apart. It accelerated because the moment you stopped waiting for someone who had already moved on, you gave yourself permission to become the man you were always meant to be without needing her to see it validated or be part of it. That's what it means to outgrow her, not just to survive the pain, but to become someone even she wouldn't recognize, someone strong, focused, centered, someone who no longer needs closure, because you became the closure. If you watch this until the end, comment "unstoppable" below, because that's exactly what you are, unstoppable. And if this message hits you deep, if it reminded you of your power, then support this channel. Subscribe, share, hit like. You have no idea how many men are drowning in silence, thinking they're alone. By supporting this message, you help them hear this truth. You help make this kind of healing accessible to the men who needed it most. This isn't just content. It's a movement, a shift. A brotherhood of men who are done living small, who are choosing growth, peace, and power. Let's build that together. You're not broken. You're just getting started.